There's such a lot of change happening in this industry. It's absolutely phenomenal. And as he and I go around the industry, and we speak to so many of you across the piece, be you employers or be you our associate members, we can see those changes coming. And I wanted to try and pick that up in the next sort of 20 minutes or so. But to get a feel for where the audience is, I want to get a Slido polling question up. So again, if I can call on Claire to put up my first, it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek Slido question, just to sort of see where we are. I'm trying. So, and this one, pick as many as you are familiar with. So I've got a bit of a mixture going on there. They're not all on there, but anyway, pick up, are you familiar with Netflix, blockchain? Have you heard of Napster? Do you know what Napster is? Artificial intelligence? You've got them all coming up. I've thrown in some 1980s references. You'll see why. Because in my talk, I'm going to refer to all of these, and I wanted to get a gauge of where you're at. Okay, so artificial intelligence rating fairly low at the moment, blockchain rating fairly low. That's not a bad thing, because I'm going to refer to that in my talk. Fintech, I explained that as well. The cloud, Rasmus mentioned cloud, so hopefully that will come up during the day. I don't specifically talk about that in my talk. Tom Cruise, you'll see my reference on that one coming up. So if I can just get the final results on that one, what's coming out top? Oh, it's gone. Netflix, you all know about Netflix. Okay, that comes up quite early on as well. So that gives us a good feel. It feels like some of the newer cutting-edge tech concepts are coming further down the list in your knowledge. So hopefully, by the time you head home today, you'll all be ticking some of those lesser-known things about cloud and blockchain and AI, as well as Tom Cruise in Top Gun. So as I say, there's huge change coming in our industry, and I think sometimes we can all get really busy in our day jobs, and we can forget to sort of look up and look around and keep up with our reading and watching programs and so on to see what's happening. And if we do that, we can land up potentially to be a bit like Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster? Imagine you're all a bit like Blockbuster back in the year 2000, so 16 years ago. And business is going fine. And as Rasmus said, it ain't broke, why fix it? The problem is, if you don't do what he said, tear it up and start again, think you're a beginner, you land up where we are now in 2016. Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore. It's all about Amazon Prime, it's about Netflix. Ironically, Blockbuster had an option to buy Netflix back in the day, but they didn't see a future in it. So the message today is don't be a Blockbuster. Try as much as you can to listen for those themes, listen for those threads of things that people keep talking about that become evident that is what might change your job in the future. And that can be hard to do, because how can you, among all the noise, poor old Blockbuster, how could they tell Netflix was going to come through compared to anything else? But that's part of the challenge we've all got, is to pick up those themes. So hopefully we can give you a bit of a guidance today of what some of those things are you should be looking at. And I'm going to try and do just sort of 3 key areas that I can see potentially coming up and changing things quite radically in this industry. There's certainly a lot more than 3, but these are the 3 that I wanted to flag up. But before I get into that, I just wanted to talk about fintech. That was one of my buzzwords on there. So fintech is technology in the financial services industry, so financial tech. So where all the cool geeks want to work these days. They want to develop technology for financial services. And that's important to us, that there's going to be this huge development in fintech, because it's going to impact on pensions and insurances in particular, and banking and everything else in financial services. And what these people are doing in fintech is they're going, all those admin headaches, gone. That opacity, forget it. We want transparency. We want everything in one system. We want it driven by artificial intelligence. And they want it underpinned by blockchain. I mentioned blockchain earlier. I'll come back to that in a second to try and explain what that is. So what does that mean if that's what's happening in fintech? Essentially, it means that the financial services industry is facing its Napster moment. Those of you who are a bit older remember Napster. Napster was the music streaming service before iTunes. And when you talk about a Napster moment, it's the moment that somebody, and in Napster's case, it was the time the music industry, so when somebody discovers that all their IP, all their secrets are all over the web. They no longer control it themselves. That's a Napster moment. And that's what fintech, or the financial services industry, is about to face. And they reckon when that happens, suddenly things like pensions charges, claims data, transactions, all sorts of things will now no longer just be controlled behind sort of secret in black boxes somewhere that none of us can get access to. It's going to create much more transparency than we've ever seen before. How? Don't ask me, it's not my area of expertise, but that's what the word on the street is among the fintech industry. We're going to see a massive, massive shift. I mentioned blockchain. Now, I don't know a lot more than Dilbert does when it comes to blockchain, but I went onto Wikipedia and I tried to come up with a simple definition, because I think most people in this room probably don't know what blockchain is. What they describe it as is being like a big digital ledger, and a ledger in which transactions are written. And there's no single authority or no one person controlling that ledger. It sits on thousands of computers all over the world with oversight all over the world. It means that all the transactions are also instantaneous. And there's far more transparency on the data that's in blockchain, but it's also anonymous. And that's the bit where I need an expert to tell me how it can be both transparent and anonymous. But I'll take their word for it. And it's instant. So if you do a bank transfer, it happens straight away. You sell pension investments, it happens straight away. So that you can start to see potentially a huge, huge change. And I'm not just taking this out, plucking this out of the air. This is seriously what people think our banking will be underpinned by in financial services. The FCA has been looking at blockchain a lot more carefully, so they're prepared for when it comes in. And I was reading a very interesting blog that I shared on LinkedIn a few months ago, and I know some of you reshared it, called The Worm in the Horseradish by Darwood from Reddington. And he was saying, okay, well, think about blockchain. If it's got all this data, and this data is sitting in transactions in blocks. Sorry, I forgot to tell you this, but it all sits in blocks, and the blocks are all linked, hence blockchain. And historically, you can't change those transactions. They're set, they've got oversight throughout the world. And because the blocks are linked to each other, you also can't manipulate them, which is what makes it so robust, and which is why people trust it more than, say, the current banking system. But if you can get all your data and transactions on yourself, for example, we could have this highly accurate self-data, for example. So all your DNA, your genetic predisposition, your health, how much you exercise, what food you're buying, how green you are, where you're traveling, how many friends you've got, a whole raft of highly accurate self-data that only you can see, but that starts to interplay. So for example, perhaps it will start to be able to give much better predictions on how long you're going to live compared to what you might know now, because it knows so much about you and how you're living your lifestyle. And what if that was linked then to your pension investments? And it could adjust your investments according to how long it looks like you're going to live. It sounds pie in the sky, it sounds a bit random, but it starts to make you think, wow, you suddenly bring data together in a very different way to the way we do now. The way we think now as reward and benefits people are quite siloed. The pension investment's got nothing to do with employee well-being. And as for anything to do with your friends, well, that doesn't even come into the workplace. I'm not saying employers will be able to see all this data, but you suddenly realize that we could potentially see a lot more data than we ever saw before because of advances in things such as blockchain. So I wanted to discuss over tea later. The other thing I wanted to talk about is artificial intelligence, AI. Now, we're going to pick this up in the panel in a bit, because I know some employers are saying, can't wait for AI to come in. I'd love to have AI on my flex. What does that mean? Well, AI is with us. Anybody who's been onto Amazon, I'm sure everybody in this room probably has, people who bought this also bought that. That's AI. Auto-correcting emails. When it guesses what you're going to say. In my case, it normally gets it wrong, which is why some of you get some really weird emails from me. But that's artificial intelligence. I was having a conversation with a founding partner of a company called Cognitive Finance, and she is from investment banking industry, and she's a qualified psychologist. And what they're doing is they're developing an AI proposition to use AI for investment decisions. And what she's planning to do is then use that in the employee marketplace. So when employees are thinking about their pensions and wanting to make some changes, they will be getting prompts before they even know what prompts they should be what decisions they should be making. They'll be steered in certain directions using AI. So you can see again how that might then influence also across other benefits and other choices that people might be making, why benefit managers are interested in AI. Now that's all well and good, you might be thinking, but you know what, where on earth is all this data going to come from? You know, the current pensions and insurance companies aren't exactly well known for being able to give us lots of data easily. Well, I think we saw that in Rasmus's session, already alluding to who out there are the big data companies. Some of the big ones, Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple. If you don't think that Apple's a data company, I was having an argument about this with my partner this weekend. Well, what do you think Apple Pay is? How much information do you think they're holding on you? Each one of those, they've all got data, and perhaps your employees would trust them and their data more than they'll trust the employer or they'll trust the pension insurance company. So that could be interesting to see whether they come to play. You know, Facebook already is doing local rentals, getting into the real estate market. Who would have seen that a few years ago? Or it might be one of the new players in the market. I was reading a blog that came up on eConsultancy, the marketing training and analytics company, and they're saying the companies that are giving the big banks a run around are the likes of Funding Circle, Nutmeg, and eToro. I can't claim to know any of them, but these are all online financial companies that are completely changing the way that we deal with financial data. So watch out for a big shift on that side as well. But it's not as though our current suppliers, our current pension, insurance, and financial suppliers that work with employee benefits are going to suddenly sit back and go, well, that's fine, come along, eat our lunch, we don't mind. In fact, they're getting together. I was at a meeting 3 weeks ago where they're trying to launch a technology task force of all the platforms in the benefits and pensions industry to say, let's get together, let's actually sit down and work out if we can have some common protocols. Because if we each keep going off in our own separate directions, developing our own separate platforms, and they're not speaking to each other and not integrating smoothly, and we've just got lots of friction between each of our digital projects, we're going to have a problem. And we're going to see not just VHS beta, again a nice 1980s reference for those of you who are more my age or older, but you'll have 10, 20 times different versions out there, which is probably what lots of you are experiencing as I speak to you. You talk about it's just a bit of a nightmare, especially globally, trying to plug all these different systems in together. So hopefully if the technology task force takes off and people start to work together, we'll see things going more smoothly in that direction. But as I say, they're still just launching and getting together for the first time. So blockchain and AI were two of the things I wanted to mention in particular before going on to my third area, which is employee performance. So coming a bit more to some of the stuff that Rasmus was talking about. And this is an area that I'm sure many of you are much more familiar with. You're either doing it yourselves at your organization, or you're starting to talk about it, or there are organizations in this room already doing it. But how you assess employee performance is changing. And how this then feeds into pay and bonus systems and broader things like recognition. We're going to be hearing a bit more about that today from some of our sponsors. Learning and development and benefits is also shifting because of this way we measure performance is changing. Because it's this ability to integrate data and analytics, put it into, to contextualize it and show the causal links to outcomes. So, employers are now going, right, let's have a look at our CRM. Let's have a look at our sales system. Let's get our engagement, our compensation, our recognition platforms, our social platforms, company performance, whatever we can, and crunch that data together to get a much better picture of objective to performance data. No longer a line manager sitting down once a year and giving you a score that then going to tell you what pay increase you get. I mean, that's out the arc these days. It's going to be a lot more robust and a lot more in real time as well, because this can be ongoing, continuous, far more agile. And all employees are more agile. I'm sure every one of you, if you look every few months, you think, my goodness, how my job's changed. My objectives need to change. You can't just do this once a year anymore. Also, this idea of crowdsourcing your performance data. I know we're going to hear about that today as well. Much more not relying on one line manager, but what are other managers saying about an employee? What are the teammates saying? What are the internal customers saying? And that's feeding into performance reviews and how people are assessed at work. So some sort of concrete examples where this is happening. So Zalando, the European e-tailer, they've had this in place for a little while now, and that's a real-time crowdsourced tool. And they take structured and unstructured feedback from meetings, from problem-solving sessions, from completed projects, from launches, from campaigns, to see how each employee has performed. And employees can even ask supervisors and peers for feedback via an app. And they say because that data is real time, it's far more accurate. The other company that's doing that is GE. So GE is getting qualitative and quantitative data. They're rolling this out at the moment. They hope to have it all implemented by the end of 2016. And they say by having it in real time, it means employees can adjust their behavior. They're not waiting for a quarterly review or an annual review to see if things have gone wrong or if they're on the right track. But GE says what's really, really important, it's not just about the data. You've still got to have that conversation. You still need to sit down with your line manager. But what you talk about is shifted. So now you're talking about what are your peers saying about you? What can you yourself as employees see your impact was on business results? So that makes a big change. And then it gets onto the bit of how this might affect reward professionals. And there's a company, I don't know the name of the company, all I know is that they're a tech company in the Middle East, hence the rather garish map to represent them. But they were noticing massive attrition rates, lots of people leaving and going to competitors. They thought, well, the only solution is everybody else is paying more. We need to take $100 million, put it into the comp budget and try and hold on to these people. Luckily, some bright person said, let's look at the data. And they had a much closer look at the data, and they realized what the real problem was with people leaving. They said, we don't get enough recognition. We're not getting enough learning and development here. Came in time, they were able to redirect their spend. I don't know how much they then spent, but at least it was effective. It actually made a difference, and they could use a broader reward package to hold on to staff as opposed to just throwing pay, and that would have been a complete waste of money. Here's my Tom Cruise photo. So, I feel the need for speed. If you're sitting here going, oh my goodness, I'm so far behind all of this, don't panic. Yes, you do need to keep up with it, and you're here today, so it clearly shows that you're aware of that. But everybody in this room is on a steep, steep learning curve, and that curve will be quite steep for some time to come. And if we do it together, if we come to events like this, talk to each other, share experience, ask each other, if you hear somebody talking about something that you know your company's about to do, go and have a chat to them, get their card, have coffee next week, get a buddy system going, get email round robins going. Let's do it together. And when we meet again next year, I think all of you will be much further along that road. And we just keep doing it, because we don't know where we're going. Nobody's got a set answer. But the world is changing, and let's go on that journey together. Thank you very much.